All right.
All
I'm
right.
rolling. And here we go. Another transmission of perspective shift.
Back again.
Yeah. How's it going, Mike?
Great.
All right,
Good
right.
week.
Yeah, it's been a really good week. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a very interesting week. So, but I guess every week is interesting if you think you know what you're supposed to be doing,
Yeah,
and
right.
you realize you don't.
Well, that's the thing. We're all just kind of playing around, pretending we know what to
Floating
do.
around on this planet,
Mhm.
thinking we know what we're doing.
Mhm.
I was explaining to someone earlier. It's like, you ever go to a grocery store and you see a woman or a man, it could be anyone, pushing a cart around, but the cart is functioning, looks like a car, and there's like a 2-year-old steering. We're the 2-year-old steering. We think we're the ones doing the work, but we're not. We're just responding to it.
That's
you know?
a damn good point.
Yeah, it's funny because when you do it, you take the severity out of this whole thing that we're talking about, and we give it up to the person who's pushing the cart. But when we play along with it, it feels like we're actually doing it. We're involved in it, you know?
And I like how you said that because, like, we generate these grandiose ideas about us, you know, doing this, doing that, and in a way, just to kind of, I guess, appease our ego.
Yeah.
You know, we jump into it. We jump into these tasks, and we work all day, and we think, oh, you know, if I'm not grinding, I'm not, you know, this isn't the meaning of success. No. It's not
Yeah, well,
that.
that's you give it that meaning, but it'll exhaust you.
Exactly.
And it creates-
You're assigning the meaning to that feeling.
Yeah.
So now, in order to feel quote unquote success, you must have this gut wrench, pain,
Yeah,
strife
ulcers.
feeling.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not succeeding.
I'm very successful. I have a pacemaker.
Yeah, exactly. I've had 3 heart attacks and I'm
God
45.
damn it, look at me now.
Yeah, exactly. I've made it. I'm
Yeah.
successful.
I was speaking about like Dick Cheney. I don't know, by the age of 29, 30, he had his first heart attack.
By 30?
I could be wrong, or maybe a little bit
Oh,
older than that, but like he's had heart issues, and it's like he's like, oh, the guy keeps going. And it's like, it's funny because I'm listening to this interview, and it's like interesting, but like they're looking at it as an accolade. I'm like, dude, it was a heart attack. I mean, something's not functioning well, you know. But yeah, like, yeah,
Yeah.
nothing's gonna stop
But
me.
that's the thing. We will choose certain things and we'll wear them as badges of honor.
Yep.
Yeah. And we'll think, oh no, we're supposed to feel that pain. And on the flip side, we do the same thing with pain, stress, like the emotional baggage we carry from when we were like kids or relationships.
Yeah. So
you
you're
know?
like, oh, I can't do that because my Mr. Schneider told me I was an idiot.
Yep.
It's like,
Or we get ourselves into these horrible relationships that are toxic as can be because we think or we've seen the toxicity from growing up in a certain life, etc. So we're just constantly mimicking stuff that we'll see and we pick up on, and we don't realize that that's just part of that program. We saw mom and dad interact this way, so we took that pain and strive to be never ending or continuous. So we must feel that pain, or we get into a relationship where we want to feed off of
this
that
is
pain.
how it is. But then after a while, you feel like a ping pong ball. You're going back and forth. And there's a level of us in every human being that you understand the inadequacy of it. There's something wrong with this. But you don't know what it is. So then we make up stories like we were talking about earlier. This is life.
Mm-hmm.
You win some, you lose some.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's like, I got this issue. Well, you're married. What do you expect? You know? And but what's interesting about making up that story, it serves a purpose till the moment in which it doesn't serve anymore. What I mean is, to say, like, when you mess up, say, yeah, I'm human, is a safety mechanism. It makes you feel better about the thing you thought you messed up with. So it's good. I'm not saying get rid of those stories, because when you tell a story that takes the pressure off of having or had not done something, you're actually understanding the physics in which we're talking about. It's moving in the direction of path of resistance. And sometimes the path of least resistance, like, hey, I'm only human. And it takes the pressure off of having to do more. But yet something inside says, I could do more. But you can't force it, you can't push it. So that's why we become the ultimate storytellers. There's nothing wrong with stories. But like we were talking about earlier, I'm like, just try to take Moby Dick and squish it down into The Old Man and the Sea. And what I mean is, Moby Dick is like the size of the Bible, and Old Man and the Sea can get through in, you know, if you're a good reader, less than an hour. But the content would make you think for a lifetime. Same with Moby Dick too, because there's so much impact in there, but the length it would take you to get through Moby Dick is a lot longer. One isn't better, it's just that as we become higher in consciousness, all energy will always move in the path of least resistance. But it doesn't mean the path of resistance is getting through it quicker. Sometimes I might want to read the longer book to distract or to place myself in there. But yet, I'm just using that as a metaphor. We get better at shortening the story to get to the point. We exert less energy that way.
So like when you were just saying, we'll say, oh, I'm just human, right? Okay, so why for certain things that you encounter in your life are you okay with justifying and, you know, providing yourself that story that, oh, you know, I'm just human, I'll get through this. But why don't we apply that to other areas in which we stress and toil and wither away about?
Because the ego.
Yep.
Yeah, the ego won't allow that, yeah.
Yeah.
So it depends how strong your ego is that day, you know. Sometimes it's like, yeah, okay, you're right, but you don't really mean that. But it's your ego saying that. And as we come to understand these laws that govern this physical world in which we live in, and I mean on the physical realm, but your thoughts permeate a physical energy field too. So your thoughts are tangible things, or eventually come into tangible things. They're measurable frequency waves, if you will. So when we understand these, we catch ourselves in an old program doing the story, and then we make fun of the story because do I really want to defeat myself, or do I want to expand more? Because the story of defeating this will keep me here in safety. I'm not good enough, I'm just human. So it keeps you from striving to do more, which is a safety mechanism. There's nothing wrong with that, it's okay, we do it at all levels. But once you pick up on it and laugh at it, it's like, why am I saying this? Because I don't want to do that. I want to go there. Because if there's something that you want to expand upon, it's already in the field of seeing it. But if you feel fear, like a fear of heights, if you will, climb up the ladder, I'm like, well, you climb up the ladder, so you're choosing to do that. It's not understanding that the ladder is stable, the step you're on isn't going to break. So what are you really scared of? The ground isn't going to meet you suddenly, because you and the ladder are between the ground. The ladder's supporting you. Why do you think at this moment in time the ladder won't support you?
So I think that people are often afraid to look stupid. And so
I do it every day.
When you're I know, me too. I gladly show my stupidity.
Yes.
But it's the type of thing where so many people are afraid to look stupid, even in, I don't know why I need to say even too, but I mean like even around people they don't know.
No.
Sometimes more so, they're afraid to look stupid in front of somebody.
Yes, you want to like, you know.
And it's crazy to see how much that can stop and, is inhibit the word I'm looking for?
Yeah,
inhibit your growth.
Yeah.
When you're afraid to look stupid, you're afraid to make a mistake, and ultimately you're afraid to try anything.
Yeah.
So remind yourself next time you feel that I don't want to look dumb. I don't want to know like I'm not talking about.
To be politically correct, the word really is
right.
It's ignorance, people. No one really is stupid out there except for me. I love the word stupid.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I do.
Everyone's afraid to look ignorant. Everyone's afraid to look dumb. And it's
but
like,
we all
why?
We've never been here before. We've never been here before. And that's why I think when we watch people of what we place at higher levels, famous people, whether they actors or whatever, kings and queens, the reason we have tabloid people fall around, we want to see them fall. And it's not that we're vicious people because we think that they don't fall. But when they do fall, I'm like, they're just like me. They're just as stupid as me. Thank you.
That's the ego. We
And
need
all of
that
a sudden,
justification.
now you don't feel stupid because as Einstein gave to the world, is everything is relative. You're stupid. Relative to what?
Mhm.
To that fence post over there, I'm brilliant.
Mhm.
You know? And so what am I stupid or ignorant towards is the relevant aspect of what we're talking about here. I'm ultimately ignorant to the universe in its infinite possibilities and infinite amounts of information that hasn't even came in across me, which allows me to continue expanding. But I'm not ignorant to understanding how the laws work. From understanding, like I understand how gravity works, so therefore I don't jump out of a 10-story building. I walk down the stairs. So there is this ignorance that we should know better, but then there's this empirical ignorance that you actually hold on to. That's kind of like the glorified or the blissful ignorance, if you will. That's the ignorance we're talking about, not the ignorance of like jumping out the window and break your legs. Like, oh, what do you want? I'm ignorant. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not an excuse for that. So we're not talking about blind ignorance. We're talking about blissful ignorance. There's a difference. Once you know something in the field in which we live, you can't unknow it. You can pretend to forget it, but then to grow, I need to formulate a blissful understanding of ignorance to gain more knowledge. Because if I know everything, I'm done. Don't need to know
Game
anymore.
over.
Yeah, the game is over. You don't expand anymore. So I don't want to be in that field. But yet, there's also this understanding of, yes, I'm not ignorant to that. So I know nothing, but that much I do know.
I like that.
So I do know something, but it becomes relevant, and that's what Einstein enabled us to let, the major physicists before him, or scientists before him, not the only one, but one we know is Sir Isaac Newton. And so the way Einstein changed and looked at gravity and his special relativity, it wasn't he didn't make Newton wrong, but what he showed is it's relative to the place in which we're at, which shows you the experiment being done. It's right in this situation, but it's not necessarily right in this situation. And that's the beauty of it. So I'm ignorant out here, but here I'm not. It's relative ignorance here, but blissful ignorance here. But it becomes relevant, because everyone's ignorant. And even I could prove to an English professor at Harvard that they were ignorant to an understanding of what a 5-year-old knows now, because they are no longer 5 and probably forgot what the 5-year-old knows. So there is an ignorance, but they're like, it's not worth knowing. I'm like, this is what we're shooting for. We're trying to get back to the place in which we once knew. But nonetheless, someone whose ego took the back seat would chuckle and laugh and says, you're damn right. I know what I know, but I don't know what they know. So therefore, when you start to understand this, it's impossible to judge anyone or to think you're smarter than them. Yes, they might dive into the English language better than most human beings because of what they do, and I get that, and I give them that. And they ought to, they deserve it. But it doesn't mean they know everything that someone, say, somewhere else lives that may not be noted as intellectually sound, but yet there are things they know that the Harvard professor in the English department does not. And that's how you came to this statement, I know nothing, is no thing. I can know what I already know, but that doesn't do me any good. It gives me properties to go from, but it doesn't get me to know everything.
Well, I love how you said it that way too, because in a way, everyone is a mirror to show us what we're feeling, how we're feeling. So if we're seeing that ignorance in people, it's time we stop and recognize and ask ourselves, what is that mirror showing me?
Exactly.
And
that was
going back
perfectly
to
put.
what you just said, is why we know nothing.
Yeah, so one of the challenges I do for myself, and why I use the word challenge, eventually you can take the word challenge out there. But challenge, yeah, because once we start doing this, you won't see any hatred around. But right now we're aware of it. I'm fully aware of it. So that's where the word challenge comes in. When you see someone doing something, whether it's a loved one you're living with, or a coworker, or someone out there doing something you consider to be stupid, and you point it out, it's like, they're stupid. I challenge you to recognize in yourself what in you is stupid that you recognize in them, because you can only recognize in somebody what you already are.
Absolutely.
And people are like, no, that's not true. I'm like, yes, it is, because I can only
Every
recognize
time.
stupidity
It's
if
true.
I am stupid. Or I can only recognize ignorance if I am ignorant. So instead of trying to go out there and correct someone when you see something, first, I'm not saying you don't by any means, because there's three properties to this. But the first property is when I can recognize a fault in someone, I must contain that fault. And until I overcome that fault, who am I to teach the faulter? A quick story, and I remember hearing this story years ago, and I'll throw it quick, but it had to do with Mahatma Gandhi. And there was a story where this woman traveled like a day and a half to get to see him. He was meeting people and waited in line to see him, and eventually she did. And she was with her son. And she requested Gandhi to tell her son to stop eating sugar. So his son, Gandhi's sitting down, leaned over and looks at the kid. He's over, he's like, return in 1 month. And she's like, what? Return in 1 month. So a day and a half later, she returns back home. 1 month later, another day and a half to come see him. She comes to him. The kid sits down. Gandhi leans over and says, don't eat sugar. And the woman's like, why couldn't you say it a month ago? And he goes, because a month ago, I myself was eating sugar. And I thought it was brilliant, because who is he to tell someone not to do something that he hasn't experienced? So once you actually gain knowledge in that thing, yes, because then you know how to present it to someone to help them along their journey. But if you recognize someone's doing something wrong and you haven't fixed it yourself, you now are just criticizing. You're not helping. There's a difference. And so often we've seen in our world today, and it's getting better though, is criticism rather than positive affirmation. The reason an ex-alcoholic can help an alcoholic, because they were one themselves and they wouldn't criticize. They can't, because they'd be criticizing themselves. But someone who's never drunk before, and I know best, and I could be like, you shouldn't have, I can criticize, but it's from a false premise. It's what in me am I deficient in? Where is my AA, so to speak, in me? Because there's something in me. Well, I don't drink alcohol. I'm like, well, you have an addiction somewhere else, obviously. Until you recognize it and face it, and you don't have to overcome it, but until you face it, that's the moment in which you can teach it. Because you don't need to fully know it, because you never will. There's no depths to knowing. It's just expansion. But once I face it, I'm like, oh, I am myself. And that's where the parable came in the Bible. It's like, he who has not sinned may throw the first stone. What he's saying is, if you have sinned and overcome it and no longer a sinner, you have the inability to throw the stone. Because that means you have to throw it yourself first. And if you truly weren't a sinner, there would be no rock to be found for you to throw. So either way, you're not throwing the stone. It was one of these bets you couldn't lose. I have not sinned, well, therefore you too pure to pick up a stone to throw.
On that AA little alcoholic topic that you made, comment. I personally believe that AA, NA, these programs are providing a disservice to their community and to the members involved.
They can. It's a stepping stone.
You're right, and I shouldn't say it like that because in no way is something that brings a positive or helpful thing to a person or a group of people a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I guess the way I'm trying to phrase it is,
It's
if
yeah.
you stand there and profess you are an addict each and every day,
Yeah.
you will be an addict each and every day for the
That's
rest of
it.
your life.
Yeah.
And it's so important that, when they stand up and they say, I am Mike, I am an addict, that Mike will always be an addict.
Yeah.
And so it's that I have a serious problem.
Well, it's almost like taking a boat ride from one shore to another shore, but never getting out of the boat.
There you go.
If you don't get out of the boat, you become a boatsman, not an explorer. So, what is the purpose of taking a boat from this shore to the other shore? To experience the other shore. So, look at AA as the boat trip. Eventually, you have to get to the point where, am I? And then, so getting back to the dovetail into how we talk about this, as this always happens between us, is AA is a 12-step program. Knock it down to 3 steps. And because there's a lot of unwanting steps there. Like, in other words, forgiveness, yes, but do you really need to call the person up? And because if they're not on the plane, like, I apologize for all I did and whatever. Because if they don't forgive you, you can't forgive yourself under those premises. Because if you forgive yourself, you also have the intuitive ability to know they're not ready for you to call them and profess your how you've changed. But if you continue and hold it in, one day they're like, man, you have changed.
And that's the thing. One who's professing he's changed. It's hard to take that person.
No, I don't.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's very easy and clear to see in someone's demeanor, their voice, how they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to someone that goes into AA,
yeah, because
I'm
not knocking.
No,
I'm not knocking.
But it has a ceiling.
But actually, in a way, I am knocking it.
Well, it has a ceiling because
I feel very strongly against it.
Yeah. Well.
And I shouldn't say against it because it's like, oh.
Yeah. Well, the thing, notice you're beyond that point because I
feel like
I personally never had to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had other plights in my life, psychologically stuff that I dealt with in reading self-help books and stuff like that. So the self-help book got me to feel better about myself and boost my ego to where I boast in myself. But then I realized it was limiting. But yet it served a purpose. It got me out of the gutter, to feel that way. But now I didn't no longer have to puff my chest. And then I learned the true meaning of being humble. It doesn't mean hiding away and being frail. It just means I don't need to take credit. And why don't I need to take credit? Because I'm not the one who did it. I'm the one who responded and perceived to the situation we're in. The universe did it. It was already created. I just didn't see it before. So being humble isn't like, no, I didn't do it. Well, if you have to ask, I did, yeah, I'm great about it. But, you don't need to hold the trophy. You'll give me that back.
The humility we all see all day.
But when you really understand it, humble isn't something you have to work towards. I realized I didn't do it. I just showed up and I witnessed it. Now I'm just explaining it. Like, I didn't write the book came through me. So now I'm sitting around talking about the book that came through me. But I didn't write it. It came through me. Yes, I know the English language. That's the backseat driver of the ego. Yes, I know how to conjure up a sentence. I was taught that. How to paragraph, how to do this, how to do that. I know how to tell a story. That's the ego part that I like. But the ego part in me isn't taking any responsibility for the actual whole content of the story. It came through me. See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
My ego knows the physical world, knows what people want to hear, knows what, to get a point across. But my ego, by no means, is taking full responsibility for it. Yes, it has a part in it, and it has an equal partnership in it. But just like the speaker in my car radio ought not to take accolades for the beautiful song coming through it, right? But without the speaker, you would never hear the beautiful song. The speaker's like, that's me. It's all me, baby. It's all bass. Boom, boom, boom. You hear that? That's all me. And no, but we are a speaker,
We are.
a transceiver. We transmit and receive information all the time. But there, because the speaker is built the way it is, it can sound greater than a cracked speaker. See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that's the ego part. I want to be the best speaker I can, but what comes through me, I don't own. And that's the humble, because I don't own it. So therefore, if you get upset, that's on you.
It is.
That's a cop out.
People think, oh, that's offensive. That's me. It's no. It's generally. It's
Yeah, it is.
It is. That's yourself perceiving the world for you.
Yeah, and I know throughout my lifetime, I'll continuously change my perception, which will continuously change my output, ability to output different scenarios. But I'm perceiving based on my experience in life, but I'm not held or cornered by them, because there's something else out there that goes beyond the experiential life that we live, that knows stuff, and then it comes into my brain, like, oh, that makes sense. And then I say it, but yet it didn't really, it came through me, but not of the corporeal mind. Because I can only perceive, you know?
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's funny you just said that. Like, I just had this thing kind of come to me about like what we were just talking about. So, when you see yourself, or when you find yourself becoming upset or angered or annoyed in a situation, and you look to find where you can recognize yourself in that person, you know, it's kind of like when you're a kid, and when you're a kid and you're like growing up, you're like, oh, I'm never gonna be one of those grumpy, mean old adults, you know, I'm not gonna just like hate on, you know, when you get these looks, or you're told to be quiet.
And the old guy goes, don't knock it, child.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like you're growing up, you're like, I'm never gonna be like that. And then when you start getting older, it's because you can see yourself in them, is why you're getting annoyed.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, and it stirs up emotions and stuff.
Yeah, and then you yell at the kid that you once were.
Exactly. And
like,
it's so
maybe
funny.
the old man was right. Maybe the guy was onto something.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, that's, for some reason, that just kind of popped into my head as a way to describe that, like, look for it. And so, like, that is a way, I don't know why I needed to tie that together, but, like.
No, it's brilliant, because that's really what it's about.
It just popped in. And
It's
I was like,
recognizing. Well, that's why it came in. See?
Yeah.
That's why we can't take any credit. It just came from
Literally.
Yeah. But the way you do take credit is the way you place it out there. You know, any artist will stream energy or get inspiration, but you can have countless interviews with them, but they can never tell you where they came from. But yet the artist knows how to hold a brush. He knows, you know, perhaps where to start for them. So there are abilities that they actually have and worked on. They focus on, or techniques they worked on and developed. That's the ego. That's the useful part of the ego. But where the energy spurted in for me to utilize the techniques, the brush strokes, or the verbiage, or the snare and stories, that I have nothing to do with. That sparked it, but it gave my ego a purpose. And when the ego takes a back seat to purpose, it works supremely out in the physical world with myself and others. When the ego takes the front seat and starts striving, oh, what a crash derby it may be. It's horrendous, and I've been there. you don't know, I know, I've read countless books.
Most of us
And
live
you
in
always
that
say
state
it
all
to
the
someone
time.
that's never read a book. Because
But you know what I mean? Most
we
of
never
us
screamos
live
in the halls of Harvard, you know?
in that constant state.
Yeah.
We live in a constant state of ego in drive.
Yes.
I
Well, we
would say
do, but the thing is,
often.
we do, but yet we're breaking from it, because if I can break from it,
Anybody.
anyone can. And I don't mean that to defeat myself. I mean that
I know what you
sincerely.
mean,
I
because
really do, because
that's what we're trying to
Yeah.
talk to you guys about.
Yeah. So pay attention.
No, but like seriously, it's the type of thing where I know what you mean by that,
Yeah.
because it's like, guys, there's a reason I'm trying to tell you. It's because it's like I know every feeling you're feeling. I felt that. I
Yeah.
know that worthless feeling.
And that's why when you look at some of these old parables of scriptures, whether it's stories or the Bible, or doesn't matter what book it comes from, you realize when you start to experience that real experience life, you start to see the sequence of events that led people like Jesus or Moses or anyone from any type of book. I don't care what religion it's from. How they came to the conclusion and to say the parable out they did. You're like, oh, it is this timeless understanding that is continuously flowing through every human being that's walked the planet and will continue to walk the planet that's not even here. It's how we express it. And as we get greater at this, the expression comes quicker, path of least resistance. Energy field, as it expands, it will always move in the path of least resistance. So, going back to AA, for someone going into that was their path of least resistance. But at some point, it's going to contain them. In order to expand, they must let go of it. It served a purpose. It served a great purpose. But then you have to move beyond it in order to expand beyond that point. Because you don't want to be there for 90 years. Hi, my name is Jim. I'm an alcoholic. And then it's like, Jim, how long you been sober for? I've been sober for 72 years. Like, damn, you need a drink. Like, what the fuck?
That's,
it's like, holy
that's
shit.
what I mean. We
Yeah.
trap these people.
If
and-
you're sober for 6 months, yeah, you should still be in the group. But when you're 72 years and haven't had a drop, I'm like, maybe it's time you have one. That's why I don't get invited to AA meetings, by the way.
But like that right there was like the best way to laugh and say it, because like
Yeah, you want to lighten up with it.
yeah, it's the type of thing where we don't. So I feel like people who fall into any sort of like drug addiction or alcoholism or anything, or actually no, all of us.
Well, why are they falling into it?
Well, that's the thing. We're looking to regulate our bodies. That's all they're looking. They're trying to regulate their nervous system.
Yeah.
And so for us to take
And
this
so
group
why?
of people,
Why do they want to regulate their
well,
nervous system?
a big thing, suffering, separation.
It makes you feel good.
Oh, it makes you feel good.
So intoxication, like, if I use the word like, oh, this book is intoxicating. Well, most people will take that as a positive connotation. But if I get pulled over by a cop and say, hey, I'm intoxicated, I'm going to jail. It's like, oh, I'm glad to hear you're intoxicated. But, so in certain situations, in relative form, intoxication. But we want to intoxicate ourselves, but we want to do it without having to shop for the substance. So people are like, why do people do drugs? Why do people do alcohol? I'm like, to feel better.
Exactly.
Like meditation can be the same thing. The thing is this, you can, I gotta go, well, I have to get home and meditate. It can be an addiction too.
Of course.
It can be. Now, the thing is, I get it, people are like, oh, it's like you could function. I'm like, well, some people might not ever go back to work and function in society and do things in their support of the system in which they're around, which is called responsibility. So all the things that, you and I are talking about aren't to dismiss us from the everyday life. What we're trying to do to the audience is trying to get them to jump into the everyday life. Make your job, whatever it is, your religion. if you will, or your task.
Or your
Or
meditation.
your mastery. Your meditation, thank you.
Yeah.
Take religion out of it. Make it your meditation.
I make things my meditation, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because like
Yeah.
like
So then take, instead of taking the wine,
Mhm.
make your work the intoxicating. Make that intoxicate you rather than having to go home. Because when you go home for the drink or do that, you're trying to forget your work. I don't want you to forget your work. I want you to have your work unbelievable to where you.
I feel like I took the wrong approach with the AA thing.
Well, you didn't take the wrong approach, because what you did is you brought up how a lot of people, because I talked to a lot of people how they feel about it. So if you didn't bring up one side, you can't bring up the other side. So it was brilliant the way you threw that in there.
Well, it's something I wanted to bring up, but now I'm looking at it from the way I view religion.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with religion. And essentially, they're the same thing.
They are the same.
You're holding another party down. You can
That's
look
it.
at it that way.
That's it.
And so it was wrong to me for me to view that, or wrong, right?
Misunderstand.
Whatever. It was a, yeah. There you go.
But
It
here
was-
you
it
go.
was a
You
misunderstanding.
took an ignorant thing
Approach.
and made it into a powerful thing.
A learning moment.
On camera, no less. And this was not acted out
No,
previous. to
you
anything.
can't act it out. No, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because remember how we had that conversation about religion?
Yeah.
There's no difference.
No,
Zero difference.
there isn't.
If
You-
anything,
you
you're
I can
keeping
tell a
down a mass
story.
more amount of people. You know?
I can tell a story and argue it, but essentially at the base root of it, it's a fundamental set of ideas that you do, and if you follow them, go along, you will make it to this place. So in Catholicism they call it sacraments, in other religions, other thing, AA they call it steps. But it is. But there is something about the sacrament, about the step. But when you look at it from a quantum field, it isn't the step, it's how you feel about the step. And that's why when you become a master, you can take the 12 steps and knock them down to 3. And I don't know what the 12 steps are, but one of them is forgiveness. That step don't take out. Forgive yourself. Doesn't mean you have to call the person you thought you harmed, because then you'll be on the phone all day. It's like, you ever watch that TV show, My Name is Earl?
Actually, I have.
And that was his job. He had a
I've been
list
on
of
a while.
things he screwed over.
I know exactly what
And
you're
it's
talking
funny.
about.
And
That's so funny. I haven't seen that. I mean, that was a
yeah, it was
long
great
time ago.
because it's impossible. And at the end, you realize, oh my God, you don't have to do that. And that's essentially one of the steps in AA. It's actually even within religion, they tell you to do that. So now you have to go up and say, when I was young, they told me to go to confession. I walked into confession in order to really, to get the sacrament, to move on from the sacrament of communion. You had to then have the sacrament of confession. So went in there and sat down the priest, young boy. Forgive me, Father, if I have sinned. And all of a sudden I feel myself making up sins, because there's no way in hell I'm going to tell this guy what I actually think and did, because he's human. And I don't want him to judge me. And I didn't, this is the first time in, so I didn't want him
I remember doing
so what have you said? I said bad things to my sister. What did you say? I told her to go to hell. Did you say anything else? No. What else would I say? Come on. Never use the F word. Forgive me. It's something with a bunch of it, how you told me. It's not going that far. It was like, I'm not going to tell this guy. I leave the room and I realize I just sinned my ass off. I just lied to the priest.
That's the route.
But don't worry, next Friday or whenever I go back, I'll let him know. Hey, remember that last confession last week? Well, that was a lie. Yeah, it was a lie.
Like
That was a
I
lie.
had last week.
Yeah, everything I do is a lie. Everything. Yep, that's a lie. Yeah, I think you're an effing asshole
That's
too.
everyone's confession too, which is so
Yeah.
funny.
It is.
Yeah.
But there is something.
Or every practicing.
But there is a reason it's one of the sacraments. But the thing is, I don't need a priest to confess to. I don't need another human being. But sometimes it's nice to tell someone and they're like, oh, that's nothing. And it makes us feel like, oh my God, I've been holding this thing around. It's like, yeah, it's no big deal. But you can do it in the confine of a room with nobody. once you hear yourself, like you heard yourself talk about AA, you heard yourself and you forgave yourself, and then you spun it, put the carriage in front of the horse, and then you put the horse in front of the carriage. Oh my God, because what it is when you said, correct me if I'm wrong, I despise AA.
No,
Or not despise.
I was gonna say
No,
that's a
strong.
heavy word.
I'm trying to make it strong.
Gone that.
I'm trying to get a little more
I
drama.
said I've got an issue. So
I got an issue.
yeah.
So
Whatever.
right, I have an issue with AA. You know what? AA is not bad. What felt better?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you go off of your feelings. So
Well, it brings a strong
Yeah.
emotion because I've seen so many of my friends, and I see them struggle with this on a daily basis where they're calling themselves addicts, and like they've been clean and sober, and I'm like, you're going to live your whole life as an addict, you know? When that just like in that moment when a relative passes, or a mother, a father, that moment of crisis, that excuse, that story you just told yourself, is what you'll use to justify using again or drinking again, and it's like these.
but think
It's
about this.
It's
It's frustrating, but don't let it be frustrating. This is why. And we talked about this earlier. Why is it that I'm impulsed to like talking about these laws and understandings and perceptions and everything else to get people to realize you're not doing anything wrong other than you thinking you're doing something wrong. And when you don't think you're doing something wrong, to the outside world, you won't do wrong. Like, you wouldn't have the energy to do wrong someone. You would do unto others as you wish unto you. Why is it that you're placed in this place where you're extraordinary to explain these things? But if you had no one to explain it to, such as a friend that's stuck in AA, this is why the universe is giving it to you. So where your frustration comes out of, if there was no one to explain this to, we would just be a bunch of idiots talking right now for no reason.
No, you're right.
So the universe is placing you in and surrounded by people that want to jump that fence. But right now, they feel safe within that fence. But if they can make it over that other wall, they'll feel safer out there. But they certainly don't want to go back that way. So the confine of the fence keeps them safe. And there's you saying,
there is no fence.
no, there isn't.
That's what I'm saying.
It's an illusion.
Exactly.
But
We're
you're
building that.
So then what it is where the craft comes in, is how good can you get to explain to them the illusion without pissing them off from them running back to the other fence in which had them drink. How do you do that?
It's funny you say that. Like
That's the gift. That's the gift you were given. So frustration can bring you to a point where you don't need frustration anymore. And understand, frustration is putting the cart in front of the horse. True living is finally putting the horse in front of the cart, and the horse pulls it, the cart carries you, and you direct the horse.
Well, I like how you said which felt better.
Yeah.
You know, and you're right. It did feel way better.
Why did it feel better?
Well, it wasn't negative.
It wasn't negative based on where you're going in life. All right? Your higher self knows the direction you're going in. There might have been a time when you said that where it felt better than something else. So it wasn't wrong then. And it's not wrong now. In the short period of time when you had this conversation with yourself, another perception came along that felt better.
I love how you just said that.
Path of least resistance.
Relativity.
Relativity.
But I just love how you just said that.
But you
That was
started here
beautiful.
and you ended up here within a relative short time. So think about that. Now you have the capacity to explain to your friends because you yourself.
What perception feels better.
Yeah.
I love how you said
That's
that.
it.
But like that's great because that's truly this, the core of what we're talking about.
Perspective shift.
Cool. Our perception
Yeah.
of any given moment of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have the choice.
Yeah.
And we
you
make that decision.
chose it. I didn't tell you now.
Oh, of course.
You went in and chose it, and when you chose it, this thing lightened up. I saw it in you, and I saw it in me because we're all like, you want to shoot out in perspective. And when you get in this good feeling place, that's your check. And what I mean is, you see something, and out of perspective, I can have perspective, well, that guy's doing it wrong. But my feeling in there goes again, like checks that guy's doing it wrong. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel good. What perspective can you choose but still help that person? There's something I can help that person to help them out to move smoother. Didn't use the word wrong. I didn't have to demean them, and I can help them. There's something in me that the better I feel, the less junk I want to put through me. You know, like I remember hearing this analogy years ago. Years ago, when a car had a carburetor, bad gas could go into the carburetor, and until the engine was completely full with it, it wouldn't shut down. But if you put a speck of dust or bad fuel into a car right now, it will shut down quickly to protect the engine, because the way the jets shoot in, the actual there's no longer a carburetor doesn't open up. You have fuel injectors. They're so small that the slightest speck of dust will shut it down. But why does it shut it down? Because it'll never blow the engine. A carburetor is like, oh, the engine blew. Why? Because you didn't realize the junk that was going into it, because you didn't notice it. But when you get so refined, the slightest perception or thought out of kilt will shut you down to choose another one. That's how it works. And if you put bad gas in the car will stall. But guess what? It didn't get into the engine to ruin it. It's an easy fix. And even the cars now learn how to regulate the bad fuel. That's what we're striving for. And that's the amazing thing. And that's why a lot of times people are like, I wish I didn't know that. Why? Because now when I get upset, I get even more upset. I'm like, good, you're on the right path.
Yeah, I was going to say,
You're
keep
on the right
going.
path. You're on the right path. Because before,
I feel that
you thought it was okay to be ignorant in a place where you shouldn't be, in the non-blissful way. And what I mean is being criticized of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And why did I do that? Because if I could judge and knock somebody else, it mistakenly or illusionary makes me feel higher. But you didn't. All you did was dig a hole for them to fall in. You didn't go any higher. But once they climb out of the hole, they're at the same level. And then they take the very dirt that you made the hole in, they make you stairs and they go above you. Don't dig holes. Build bricks, foundations. And you as well step onto it and encourage other pathways to come up to it. So with your friends that are stuck in there, you create the pedestal. It isn't you, but you create the path or the platform and step on it, show them how you walked up and encourage them up and say, I was once there, whenever you're ready. And where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. Once you relinquish someone for saying you ought not to be there, or when you relinquish someone saying, no, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, all of a sudden, oh my God, you take off the suit, you get out of the cab, so to speak. AA is a cab, or the boat ride. It got me to the shore, got me to the other side. The cab is like, hey, don't leave me. Where you going? I need you. Because without the passengers, the cabbie has nothing to do. But I tell the cabbie, don't worry. There's plenty of people on the other side. Go pick them up. We're done. I bless you. Thank you for getting me here. I graduated. I've awakened to the understanding I am no longer the alcoholic. I changed my history. Yes, there was a character, just like, is Tom Hanks still Forrest Gump? No, he's not. He's played many roles. And even after he steps off his set, he isn't that character anymore.
We can choose our roles.
Yes, choose another one.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
People think, well, I've got to live this
You know
role.
what, like, so the AA guy, it's like, stands up, it's like, I'm Jim, I'm an alcoholic, I haven't drinking 15 years. That's like an actor waiting for a job.
Yeah.
Waiting for a new role. I'm like, right? It's like, do you want a new role? Get one. It's like, well, that's the only role I know. I'm like, do you like the role? I'm not saying it's bad. I wouldn't even knock it. But yet, there is a limitation to it. But going in a role, there's a limitation in the role. But that limitation will create infinite possibilities. But yet, my soul isn't in that. And that's what keeps me sane, so to speak. That's what keeps me going. Knowing this box I'm in, I'm going to work every inch of this box, but this isn't all there is.
And that's also a good thing to keep in mind for, at home right now. Maybe you're not at the job you want or should have. Remember, this is temporary, and by all means, write the story about what you're doing now is getting you set up for whatever you truly want to go after. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everything is temporary. The only thing that isn't temporary is the present moment. Because there was a bar in New York I went into one time ago, a couple times, and there was a sign that says, tomorrow, beer is on the house. But every day you walked in, the sign said, tomorrow. Tomorrow never came.
Yeah.
Bartender's like, it says, well, yeah, but I read it last day, but it's today.
Yep.
It isn't tomorrow. So you never got free beer.
That's
But
actually.
you kept coming back and spending more money. And it's like, there is no tomorrow. You can never experience tomorrow. You can only experience now.
That's a great way to explain
Yeah.
being present.
A bar and beer. Yeah.
But like,
Wait,
you know what I
wait.
mean? But like, there is no really tomorrow.
There's never a
We
tomorrow.
can't have tomorrow.
No, you can't.
Just like we can't have what happened in high school.
Yeah.
Literally,
No.
we have this moment that
No.
we're in. So there is no such thing as the past.
I get-
There is absolutely no
We
such
could
thing
talk
as the
about the
future.
concept of the past. We could talk about the concept of tomorrow, but we're doing it now.
And we can only
Now.
always be
What
doing
time is it?
now.
It's now.
Mm-hmm.
And I challenge you people next time somebody asks you time to say, it's now. And see what
We'll
happens.
Go on for a whole
Yeah, stop busting
quite
my
some
balls.
time.
What time is it? It's now.
One concept I do want to bring up that relates to what we were chatting about in the beginning. So I heard this and it made me really kind of think about it a lot. And so you've heard the saying, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Very,
It's
very
a biblical thing.
famous statement.
Yeah.
So I was listening to a gentleman that I like, I think it was Sadhguru, and he was explaining that that's actually backwards. And when you think about, how we discuss, hey, the life is a mirror. It's showing you exactly how you feel and exactly your thoughts, or what you're feeling, what you're thinking. So if you think about that, and it's, I think, therefore I am, right? So we put that backwards. I am, therefore I think. And he's got a lot of,
Again, the horse.
good behind that, you know what I mean?
The horse is the carriage, right? You're
Yeah.
taking the words and just putting them around. So, but
Mhm.
if we put the horse in front of the carriage, we know how smooth it runs, opposed to the carriage in front of the horse.
Mhm.
And it is, because who am I?
But
I am the witnesser of the thought. I'm not the thought or the thinking. But it's a role I play, and that role I give over to the ego to kind of play out.
and in a weird way, it's three. So you have,
Oh, there's a Trinity.
yeah, because technically we're spirit,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's the thought, the thinker, and like the spirit,
Yeah. It's kind of like in Christianity, Catholicism. It's like the Father, the Son, the
Yep.
Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. Well, the Father, and we could sit there all night and have
That's just
analogies.
the way the language was and written, and it was a patriarchal time. It was
Yeah, so the
if
Father's
somebody
one.
felt the strength, they described it as father.
So the Father was one side of the coin, the Son's the other side of the coin. So one could say the Father will teach the Son, therefore it's the teacher. The Son, therefore, is the student. All right?
Yeah, absolutely, teacher student.
But the Holy Spirit is the actual. So if there's heads and tails on a quarter, the Holy Spirit identifies the quarter as a
Itself.
whole entity.
Mhm.
The Father and Son are one. You cannot separate the two. And the Holy Spirit is the only entity that knows that. So, so I am who I truly am is the witnesser of the duality in which I play. And that's really what, so.
I like how you said that.
So that's what, I'm witnessing.
I know what you're saying.
The duality in which I play. And I play the duality of teacher-student. I can't separate which
You're
am
acting as the coin.
Yeah. If I
not
flip
as
it,
heads or tails.
Yeah. But I'm recognizing I'm playing
you
the heads and tails. I'm playing the
exactly.
games of heads and tails. Flipping,
That's that ebb and flow in this third dimension.
Yes, third dimension, and even move into the fourth dimension. As we move into the fifth dimension,
You're right.
then you're talking about just the spirit part of it. There is contrast, but it's not as great. It's like the contrast between pastel then a deep red. It's muted, see-through, where like a dark red, like deep red, isn't. There's a lot more contrast now because it's denser. So we live in a denser contrast. Moving into these other realms will be a lighter contrast. So, if Mike Tyson went to punch you in the fifth dimension, it wouldn't hurt as much. Everybody punching now, it's gonna hurt. Yeah.
Oh, dude. Oh,
So don't make fun of Mike Tyson until you get to the fifth dimension. Then it's okay. Hope Mike Tyson doesn't hear this.
So, this could be like a whole conversation. I'm sure we could go forever about it.
Yeah.
But like with anything. But I just got to throw it out, just like for me and you, going. So that's one thing I think, Catholicism, Christianity, whatever you want to say, really got it wrong was not in. And I guess you can consider the spirit feminine, but not introducing a feminine role to the universe.
Which is the expansive.
Well, it's so important, and so you see the gods in Eastern culture, etc. And you'll see half man, half woman, and truly, guys at home, you need to understand that to understand and grasp in this universe, there is a masculine and feminine energy, and I'm not just talking male and female. I'm talking energy.
But it was man who did that because. When you look at the Bible, and it's known. I'm not a huge studier of the Bible and nothing, so I'm talking thing in sound bites, whatever. But it was like roughly in the 4th century when Constantine, who was one of the first Roman empires to become Catholic, he edited the Bible as we know it today. Obviously, we're talking about the New Testament. So, but there were a lot of parables and stuff in that were actually written from females. Will pull. So it's not Christianity, it was man's viewpoint on Christianity that altered it. So it seems like in the in the East, the ego didn't interfere with the teachings of these people. Because Jesus was of the West. But it seems like, he was teaching as if he was from the East. And I'm like, well, it's funny how we do that. It's East and West. It isn't East or West. But man's ego of the conquering and building wants to say, it's not working for me. Let's just, it would be if
it's a big problem in Western culture.
Well, it's changing, but it'd be like me if I'm reading Moby Dick. I'm like, I think I could do a better job at this. I like the theme, I like the whale, I like the captain. Yeah, but I would do a little different, and so I rewrite the book. And I just better hope that no one else read the book before I rewrote it. See what I'm saying? So there would be a span of time. They're just like, what the hell is this bullshit? There's gaps here, because, I didn't think that was needed, so I just took it out and then slapped my name on it. And then the King James version, right? It's like, how many versions of the Bible are there? I'm like, I don't know, how many people? Yeah. But, not too long ago, archaeologists found a more developed or more expansive part of the Bible. There might have been even more expansive part of that we don't know, even the part they found. But when Constantine, I think, came in, he changed it. He was one of the first Roman empires to actually become Catholic.
See, that's cool. to know that history.
I don't, and again, I'm not a historian. I hear these
but
little
a general
things.
idea, just to know, understand. Okay, so
like I've
there
never,
are texts missing, and not even that. It's just like
that's how we can't.
it was kind of crafted that way, which makes sense. You know, that strength and that.
Because and that's why we can't knock Christianity, but the people that try to change it, and a lot of religion, you could do that with Islam. You look at Islam, it's like you look at the Quran, you read it from a neutral standpoint. I'm like, it talks about everything Christianity does.
Absolutely.
But then you take a sector in a certain area and they take it and they spin it to their liking, and you're like, well, I don't think it was meant for that way because it was out of harm. But they might argue with you. So can you imagine no one actually had the Quran, but someone from one of these sectors had written it, and they would have written it that way? It's like, oh my God. So that's kind of what happened. People look at Christianity, I'm like, no. When you look at the whole thing, if you can read between the line and the gaps and you understand it, you're like, oh, it seems like something's missing here, because there was. Ask and it shall be given. And it's like, what's the next chapter? Well, that's it. Well, actually, supposedly, in the founding parts that they found, there was a further explanation onto that, and it was more instruction. And it goes more like, ask and it shall be given, and then you kind of like, I'm going to short-term it. You ask, the universe will cooperate and give, but you then must find yourself in the place to where it's to be received. And that's your job. It isn't your job to create it. There is nothing new under the sun. But if I don't go to the front door where the package is delivered, I'll never get the package, even though it was delivered, and even though the content in the package was created. I had nothing to do with that. I just wanted it for the utilization of it, and it was given. But if I never go to the front door, open up the package, and utilize it, I think, oh, this shit doesn't work. I'm like, no, you have to get into the state of where it's going to be given. How do I do that? Well, once you ask, keep moving. So if I order a book to read for the summer, do I wait at my front door for it to come? Or do I go buy a bathing suit, suntan lotion, and a beach towel, beach blanket, and make my reservations for a hotel on the beach? And once it's all checked, I hear, open the door, here's your book for the beach. I got into the state. But if I waited near the door, or I didn't know where it was coming, like, can't go to the beach, why? The book didn't show up. So you blame not getting the book, and you look outside your front door and you got like a library sitting on your lawn, you never have to look out there. Do you realize how many things you acquired in life that are waiting for you to experience? But even if you open the door and there's 500 books there, guess what? You can only read one book at a time, one page at a time, one paragraph at a time, one word at a time. You can only do that, what, now?
And also, you can always do this, and the gifts never go away or end.
Just have a warehouse.
And that's important, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I missed all my gifts. No. It's everything and anything is still available.
Yeah, if you don't finish the meal on your plate, so what? You throw them into the mulch. And then you throw in the mulch and it gravitates, put in the earth, and it grows back to food. Nothing ever goes to waste. We just don't understand the full cycle of it. You're wasting water. I'm like, do you know water can't leave the planet?
Really?
Well, the clouds pull it up. We're in a dome. It's like, it's like we're in a snow globe. It hits the thing, it falls down. There's condensation. The sun creates its own filtration system by heating it up, and when it creates a magnetic, so the water droplets disappear, and it's a whole system. Yeah, it's reclaimed water.
Hey.
It claims it from the ocean, then puts it back into the ocean.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So now that we know that we don't have to do that, yes, it will end up in different places. So we have the capacity to perceive and move to those places. So, I don't suggest like, I'm waiting for the water to come back to the desert. I'm like, might be another 1,000,000 years. So you can head to the ocean. We have the ability and knowing to do that. I'm gonna sit right here.
72 years.
Yeah, 73 years. Damn. How many coins you have? Right?
No, man, we need to cut it out.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. Because, like, to people, like,
I know.
we're not
We're
at
not
all
making fun of it.
We,
Well,
like,
we're trying to lighten it up because when you make something severe,
That's the
after,
thing.
yeah.
Like,
yeah.
trust me, I would never try to disrespect any guy who has 72 years sober at all. And neither would Frank. You know?
If you're 17 years sober, you had to start drinking at 10.
Yeah.
Come on.
Hey, I'm just saying. You
and
know,
then you had to stop.
there's going to be somebody
But then you had to stop at 15.
My
Come
grandpa
on.
is
But
81.
you had to stop. You had to start drinking at 10 and stop. All right, we're getting out of
81
hand.
years.
Yeah, we're just having
You
fun.
know? And so, yeah,
Yeah.
we're not trying to offend anyone. And that's not it.
Yeah, it's not on
But
purpose.
that's funny.
See, we just learned something. We learned to be a little more sensitive. All
I
right.
thought that was a good one.
And that's our perspective shift. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. That was good.
No, it was.
That
That
good.
was like a bunch of
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
But they all went to the same place.
That's what I mean. There was a lot of different offshoots or whatever.
And it's still recording.
And mine's still